It's the Flow Sports Hour on this Tuesday evening, and normally at this time it's time for the EPL with Johnny Moore. Johnny not feeling all the best. I think he's probably having too much of Newcastle Brown Ale, I dare say. What do you reckon, Ellis? He joins us now to help me get through it.
Yeah, g'day Clayton, good to be with you. I don't know about the ale call there. I don't think Johnny Moore's touched alcohol since he was probably 18. But he's Johnny's off. So good to be chatting about the UK football scene with you again.
Yeah, so he'll be back, of course, very soon. Now, there were some big results over the weekend. We'll start with the one, we'll get it out of the way, otherwise we'll spend all the time talking about it. And that was the magnificent victory yesterday morning that we talked about just here in the studio. Liverpool 7, Man United, big goose egg.
Their worst result in 92 years, Manchester United's, Clayton. Okay. And all I remember thinking to myself in the immediate aftermath of the game was, who on earth would have predicted this? And I don't think... No one. The answer is many people. But in fact, Graham Souness predicted it on TV before the game.
Really?
So, he predicted a big Liverpool win. So, yeah, there you go.
He's a wise man. Man.
He can be. Sometimes he makes the odd questionable remark. But there you go. Look, what a victory for Jurgen Klopp's side, given that they've been struggling in Manchester United under Erik ten Hag. Really at the opposite end of the ledger. What I found really interesting is sort of the double standards of Manchester United fans. If you go back to the 4-0 and 5-0 losses that Manchester United incurred to Liverpool back when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was manager, it was the end of the world for Man United fans at that point in time. But this result, which is worse than those two, they've pretty much just masked right over it. It's a case of, we've just won a trophy under this new manager. We're in this new direction and it's a new era and everything's fine. I think that reads pretty sort of roughly on the likes of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But anyway, that's a separate sort of rabbit hole. But 7-0, an absolute spanking, Clayton, and it could have been more. They were just, absolutely merciless Liverpool, and about time, I think. What do you reckon?
About time they were firing. I thought it was interesting that of the 7, 6 were at the Kop end, so I thought that would keep them nice and happy, and you'll be smiling around Liverpool at the moment. It was a great result, but that was it. It was just a result. It doesn't say it's going to be that way every game going towards the end of the season.
I will just say, to cover my biases, Clayton, that I found it refreshing to hear that Erik ten Hag forced the Manchester United players to listen to the Liverpool celebrations after the game. I think that's a very strong way to really set an example early on in your tenure when you suffer such a shocking result, which no one expected.
No. None at all. There were some other interesting results over the weekend. Bournemouth, they had Arsenal on the ropes till about 20 minutes to go, and then Arsenal, bang, 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 3 quick goals, and the result's theirs. And I'm sure Bournemouth this was one we should have had.
Yeah, just parking Bournemouth for a minute. In terms of Arsenal's season, really reminiscent of the 2013-14 Liverpool season under Brendan Rodgers. Just keep going every week by outscoring the opposition and giving every fan heart murmurs. Basically, is what Arsenal's season is right now, Clayton.
Can relate to that.
A lot of there's so much to relate to. I mean, just trying to plug gaps with young players, hoping that squad players come in and perform a role, hoping that the stars who perform week in, week out continue to do so, play their part, and they keep clocking wins. And at this point in time, you've got to be loving life as an Arsenal fan because it's been so long since they had hope, and they've got hope finally, Clayton.
And at the right end of the table. And they're at the right end of the table to have that hope as well.
Bournemouth, not so much, unfortunately. They look like they might be going down, Clayton. I know they came up again this season, and they're trying to sort of make their fans realise that they're in a new era now. The Eddie Howe of yesteryear is done. It's hard to kind of separate yourself from a figurehead that gets a club from League Two to the Premier League, Clayton, over a period of 4 or 5 seasons, which is an extraordinary effort for, at the time, what was an inexperienced manager. But he's obviously gone on to bigger and better things, far bigger and better things at Newcastle. So Bournemouth now struggling. They might become a bit of a Norwich, if you will, a yo-yo club. And although they were in this game and competitive, of course, as you say, they'll be very regretful of letting Arsenal get over the line.
Another game of interest, Brighton and West Ham. West Ham were doing well. And what's going on? What's going on with the Hammers? Because that game, Brighton were all over them from early on as well.
Well, I think it's classic David Moyes, isn't it? When David Moyes gets into a prolonged period at a club, it feels like consistency is something he struggles to achieve. You get a lot of inconsistent results with David Moyes. He's not really a manager that has a particular identity, and I think that's rubbing off on West Ham now. They sort of had those seasons of re-establishing some stability.
Yep.
Then they moved into a point in time where it was like, oh, wow, they might actually re-emerge as a top-half club again, and now they seem to be going backwards again. But you know what? Credit to David Moyes, because he said he's such an experienced campaigner that it doesn't worry him. The threat of being sacked doesn't worry him. And I guess you want to hear that from your manager. And, of course, how could it not worry him, because he's been brutally sacked in his time. As we know, one season into Manchester United, I think they just finished paying him, Clayton, after it happened 10 years ago when they gave him an 8-year deal. Yeah, Brighton, though, haven't they just, since Graham Potter left, haven't they just really sort of not risen to a new level, but just same as is, like they haven't really, they've just, this is what was installed here and we're just going to continue with it. Yeah. And credit to them, a massive 4-0 win.
It was a very good win indeed, and big hopes for Brighton going forward. Rikki Lambert, yesterday morning, he was smiling from ear to ear when I mentioned about the Liverpool result, but he said, "Oh, that doesn't mean nothing. Southampton beat Leicester."
Yeah, look, I mean, I didn't want to sort of poop on his party, but this is the worst Leicester City team in a very long time, and I don't actually see Brendan Rodgers being around too much longer, Clayton. But when you're a team that's as desperate as Ricky's Saints are right now, you're going to scratch and claw for anything you can, and they did that. And 3 points at this point in time, with April just a month away, and April's where you really need to accumulate as many points as you can. Nice to be doing it from March, but April's where the pressure really comes on, because if you leave it to May, you could well be done. So
you'll run out of time real fast.
Absolutely. So to win at home after what's been a pretty hard couple of weeks for Saints fans, we'll certainly not put a smile on their faces, but will at least install some confidence again going forward for their fan base.
Well, that just leads me to this. As we look at, just quickly, that'll be enough of the games from last weekend. As we head forward, now, as we look at the table, you and I are looking at it, and Southampton, they're sitting there in 19th spot on 21 points, equal with Bournemouth. They're only effectively 2 games out of 12th spot Crystal Palace with 13 games to go. And Rikki said to me that there's still hope. He doesn't believe that his team's going to go down. Do you necessarily agree with him in that point? That, I mean, there is still hope there, obviously, with 13 games to go. But can we see Southampton move out of this relegation zone, or are they definitely going to be going down? Bearing in mind their next match could be against a very, very angry Manchester United at Old Trafford.
Well, you have to have hope, particularly given that it's not a massive margin. But ultimately, when you look...
just those 2 games, that's it, 6 points.
No, correct. But unfortunately, with the way I look at it, I'm looking at teams above them, and I'm trying to figure out who are they better than. So, it's going to come down to them really having to play out of their skin, and desperation and pressure does great things to players, Clayton. But there's other teams that are in that mix too. Everton, no less, who, I mean, if they go down, there's going to be riots in Merseyside, Clayton. So,
well, only on the blue side, not the red, but yeah.
Correct. But, there's an abundance of big clubs there who are not going to want to entertain the prospect of relegation at all.
Well, so Leeds especially there, they've reached out to their big supporters, the likes of Russell Crowe. I've mentioned this on the program, I think, last week. I heard. That they've reached out to them for financial support because they want to stay up. They do not want to go down. So, and I'm sure Russell will certainly help them out there as being a part owner.
Well, I mean, Leeds have to ask themselves, why did they splurge so much money and now find themselves 2 seasons after being in the Premier League in a relegation dogfight again? But as we say, it's going to be a very, very, very interesting relegation battle, because if you get some of those sides who are placed in the mid-table zone starting to drop points, like your Palaces, who have been pretty comfortable under Patrick Vieira, but, you never know with them, and Wolves, they've really sort of gone missing.
When you mentioned it, Leicester, we see where West Ham and they're clubs that they're at the opposite end of the table previously, and they've just seemed to be just a bit wayward, and perhaps they are in that spiral heading down. Well,
people are fighting for jobs too. That's always the thing to remember. So it's going to be, in my opinion, it might be even more exciting than the title challenge, because you never know. Arsenal,
well, that's what I was alluding to. Yeah. Well, looking at some of the games from this weekend, and that, one of those that's fighting to stay out of the relegation, Leeds, they're at home to Brighton, who are coming off that 4-0 win. They're hot to trot. They're beating West Ham. So Leeds, that they need to turn things around and do it fast.
I think they'll win. I think they'll win, yep. At home, they've now sort of established a footprint under the new manager, Gracia. Not so much to say that they've really embedded his philosophy yet, but I think the players by now will understand what he wants and what his messaging is sort of referencing. So I think Leeds will be good to win this game.
Everton, you mentioned them before. They're taking on Brentford, are doing rather well as well at the moment. They're in good form.
Yeah, Ivan Toney, 22 penalties taken, 22 goals scored. So that's pretty scary stuff.
Yeah.
That is marksman stuff, Clayton. Brentford, a very tricky opposition, and Everton under Sean Dyche. I mean, they will battle, but battling isn't always enough in the Premier League. So I'm not convinced. So I'll go draw because I don't know whether Brentford will be good enough to win away from home.
Leicester City, you mentioned them. They're not going very well at the moment, and they've got a big task ahead, taking on Chelsea.
Huge game for Brendan Rodgers because he, of course, started his managerial career at Chelsea as a academy coach, one of the rare coaches in the modern era that's never played the game at a professional level. So he's up against Chelsea and he's fighting for his job, I would suggest, because any narrow slump that he might now entertain in terms of results could well lead to him being dismissed because Leicester, they're a big club now. They're not a Mickey Mouse club. They've won the Premier League in the modern era. Then they are not going to contemplate potentially getting towards having 4 or 5 games left and relying on Brendan Rodgers, who we were talking about 2 or 3 months ago, almost was trying to get sacked by design. Getting them out of this. So I think they'll be up for it, though, Leicester. I think they'll be quite desperate. And Chelsea, I know they won on the weekend, which is hard to believe given how poor their form has been. But they worry me. Graham Potter worries me a lot. He looks so out of sorts. Like, you look at him physically, he just looks like he's not sleeping. They look like an unhappy camp. I don't know how you...
There's a lot riding on Chelsea. They're one of the... they've been touted as being one of the European champions to go to that Champion League level and to win it, and they've fallen flat on that. They haven't fulfilled the promising that they were putting to their fans probably for the last decade. So I think that pressure must be enormous, and I'm not surprised he's not sleeping.
I think a lot of it can be attributed to the lack of Roman Abramovich. I mean, the guy was almost like, in a way, a bit of a mafia boss. Like, you were so on your toes. Yeah. This is like a 15-year period of just anyone that came in was always on their toes because they knew they'd be shipped out straight away if they underperformed and underachieved. And right now you're getting a lot of underachievement from Chelsea, which, in the past, the firing and hiring that Abramovich did always worked for him. It doesn't look like much is working for them right now with a new owner.
Other game, just quickly to look at West Ham, who again are fighting to stay up, taking on Aston Villa.
Aston Villa, pretty good odds for me in this game. Under Unai Emery, they're a different beast. I know we're very sentimental Steven Gerrard fans, you and I, but Villa now have really turned a corner since dismissing Steven Gerrard, and Unai Emery will go on and get a bigger job. There's no doubt about it because he's changed Villa's fortunes completely. And West Ham, they're untrustworthy, so even though this will be at the London Stadium, I'm just hesitant to tip them, so I'll go Villa.
Well, Steven Gerrard, when he left Rangers to go to Aston Villa, I said it was a mistake.
You did.
And I stand by that, and look what's happened, which is why I don't think Ange Postecoglou will leave Celtic. He will stay there, stay the course, and he will be there. I think he'll be there next season as well. I do not think he'll leave. There is more for him to stay there. It adds more to his, everything. It adds more to his credentials, if for want of a better word. And speaking of Celtic, he's done something amazing already this week with Celtic.
Well, yeah, the last 2 weeks, another trophy in the cabinet 2 weeks ago, and then in their game against St Mirren, which looked like it might have been a bit of a banana peel. Very rare to see Celtic go into a half-time scenario 1-0 down. But St Mirren could be a bogey side to Celtic. They beat them earlier on this season. Well, it ended up being a 5-1 win to Celtic, a casual 5 goals, which is just normal these days under Ange Postecoglou. And they've broken a record now. So that's 250 goals scored in under 2 seasons. So in 1.5 seasons, they've clocked 250 goals under Ange, which I think has never been done before in Celtic's history. So they enjoy scoring goals at Paradise Clayton, and it looks like they're going to be enjoying a second premiership in as many years under Ange.
And you could probably add another 200 to that if some of those that just missed had gone in as well, where they were unlucky. So
absolutely,
yeah, it's a well done, and I think we'll eventually see Ange in the Premier League, but maybe not for a couple of seasons yet. But keep doing what you're doing, Ange. That's what we want you to do. All right, thanks, Ellis. Thanks for that, and all the best wishes to Johnny to get back better and feeling good. We'll see him again next week on the program. But thank you for helping me sort of go through all the English Premier League from over the weekend and the week ahead.
Great to chat as always, Clayton. Thank you.